Hello, and thank you for joining me today here on Plan to Paint. Today we're going to change gears a little bit from what we've been doing, and we're going to step back to some black and white paintings. So we're starting with just titanium white and Mars black, and we're going to mix out the different values as they are in the image. So make sure I get my reference up here. Alrighty, so we got that there. I did not grab a palette knife. So to start off with, we're going to bring down some white. We're going to make this just a little bit of black in there and make we're going to use as our extreme light. The white will only be used as an extreme highlight. So we're going to bring down just a small amount of black into our larger value of white, larger volume of white. And it's going to look rather dark. You can see it's rather gray compared to the white. We might brighten this up just a little bit more yet by bringing down some more white. So we're back to Monday, back to the start of a new week. Anybody have exciting plans for this week? My plans are to be here Wednesday and Friday both. In addition to today, we're going to wrap up our Bear and Rose on Wednesday. That'll be fun. Looking forward to having that piece complete. And I hope you are too, if you've been painting along. So we're bringing in some more. Since we have a very, almost looks white here by the camera, but it's quite a bit lower in value. That's going to be our extreme light in this scene, and that's using terminology that I learned from the Evolve Artist program. It's a wonderful program. I would invite you to check it out at evolveartist.com if you would like to improve your fundamental art skills, as well as maybe pick up a new medium in oil paints. The curriculum is well put together, well structured, and the community is a very wonderful community there. We're going to bring down a little more white, and we'll mix our other light. What I'm doing is I'm mixing the lightest light minus highlights, and then I'm going to mix my darkest light. And so I need to go back to my reference here and figure out what in my image would be the darkest light. And it's a pretty light value itself. So we don't have to come down a whole lot. We want to make sure we're at least a step down, so we have some room for blending and showing a form. So we're getting this mixed up here and trying to show that it's distinctly different from the brightest light. You can actually see there's a pretty big value step here. Maybe 1.5 steps in value. And then we'll have some values in between these with admixtures as they step from one into the other. Now I want to mix up some shadow values, so I'm cleaning my knife off. I'm going to start with the other extreme, start with my black. Let's see where my darkest shadow is. The background is pretty close. Looks like maybe our shadow is just slightly darker than our actual background. So we'll be trying to pull together a value for our, I'll show this one here. You can see what we're going to use for our extreme light, we're going to use for our darkest lights, and then we've got our darkest shadow. And it's a pretty dark value, but it's a bit of a step up from pure black, and that probably needs just a touch more white to bring that up just a little bit more. I want a clear distinction between my white, stark white and stark black within my image. It gives me room to adjust as needed. If I had just started with my bright white and found out that my values were off a little bit, I would kind of be stuck. I wouldn't be able to go any brighter. So by taking a step away from the white and a step away from the black, it leaves me room to maneuver and adjust as my painting comes together. So you can see we've got a very dark gray, but it's not black. And that'll be our darkest shadows. And then we need a lightest shadow value. The thing with the lightest shadow, we're going to make it a step darker than our darkest light, so that there's a little bit of room, half steps, that we can play between the two for the purpose of transitions. We're going to again start with some black. Trying to lay out my palette so I have room to grow. I'm going to bring close to the same amount of white into that. Because the black pigment's a bit stronger than our titanium white, using equal parts actually ends up with a gray that's on the darker side. Definitely need to bring in some more white. And I put down extra white in anticipation of this difference in pigmenting strengths. And I hope that you find the paint mixing useful. I do need to put in some chapters so that we can skip right over that for people that are familiar with adjusting their values and getting their paint mixes how they would like them to be. But you can see there's a clear step, and we might even go a little bit more light. Raise this value just a little bit more in line with our darkest light. But you can see there's a clear step from extreme light all the way down to our extreme shadow. Again, terminology as taught and evolve. I find it a useful terminology. Like I said, the curriculum there is well thought out. Kevin Murphy spent a lot of time thinking about how he was teaching and has really achieved a wonderful set of ideas. Alright, so right now we've got our blank canvas, and I'm going to pick up a little bit of our darkest extreme shadow here. I'm going to start in by kind of putting in our horizon line here, getting things situated on my surface. I'm just going to kind of lightly draw in our horizontal horizon line, if you will, where the table ends. come quite to half. It's pretty close to half. It steps over half just a tad. So we're going to come over just over a tad and finish drawing this in. And you can add this uneven, it's a cloth, so it kind of dips up on the end down here, a little bit of a dip. Hold this back. We'll just do it this way. And so the ball is almost crossing that horizon line right in the center, so I've got to rotate this around. We're gonna right now I'm just kind of laying in lines to represent the object. So I'm not using the proper values yet. We'll go over and paint over top of these. Trying to make sure I get my roundness in here. And I'm not actually achieving that. It needs to come out more this way. That's not going to make for a very good showing. This is where having used a printed transfer to keep that roundness exact is useful. Otherwise you got to keep kind of playing with the image edges a little bit, making sure you're taking your flat spots out, bringing it more into a spherical shape. Come a little bit more this way. But you see over here we've got our little bit of background showing through there. And we got some direction going here. I think I'm getting my angles off a little bit. Pick up a little bit more paint. We're getting kind of sparse here. So this catches just the edge a little bit here of the sphere. Comes down. And get this nice contrast of these straight, sharp wood edges against the curvature of the sphere, the ball sitting in it. And bring this line down, this edge. I may have over-represented that just a tad. One down. You can actually see there's a little bit of a face of this showing here that we want to make sure we include. And down. I can't see the bottom of my image here. And this is actually a separate piece here, so we're going to bring it together. Catch that bottom face. So you're getting kind of the general general representation of what our object is, kind of our sketch down, if you will. And there's a bit of a shadow break right here on this ball. And if we kind of just lightly blend that in, you're going to get more of a idea of what's going on in this painting here. Then we have the shadow as cast by the whole set of objects here. We got this one of the reasons I'm doing this particular painting, one of my weaknesses when I'm drawing from life, is getting these angles to match my reference better. I'm always a bit off on my angles. And so, trying to practice that this morning here. Hopefully this practice useful for you as well. And we need to pick up a little more. So we've kind of got this line comes out. So we're going to cast shadow, hard edge. This one comes out yeah, still off on that angle. Just kind of bring it right down. I've seen a lot of people, they'll get out tape, run a tape line to try to keep their certain lines straight, and it'll work. It's just not a method that I would recommend myself to get used to doing, unless that line is critically that it needs to be straight, because everything is relative. This curvature makes this appear a lot straighter. And same thing on this spot here. This being curved makes this line over here appear straighter than it is, and that's interesting. Interesting little nuance to the way our brains work. It's actually pretty cool, in my opinion. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and start laying in this shadow more solidly. And based on the material that's below it, there's a cloth there. It's kind of a felt. So even though this edge should be fairly smooth, it's not going to be perfectly smooth, because there's just little variations in the cloth at the edge. Step back here maybe. I think Mondays maybe we'll keep the black and white. I know there's a group of other painters learning like myself that can really benefit from the simplification of removing all of the hue-based decisions and trying to get those hues just right, and color temperatures, and just relax your mind and enjoy the simplicity. I liked the little geometric stand that actually came with a sound machine that we used to make some white noise for our children to sleep. And I saw the shape and I'm like, wow, that can make an interesting object to paint. So this morning I tried to create a reference here. And I hope you find it useful. Even if you're not painting along, if you want to use it for a future painting, that's quite alright. It'll be available on my website for quite some time. Eventually I'll run out of space on the website and may replace some of these older images, we'll see. Or just buy more space. It's not the most expensive thing in the world these days, compared to early computing days. Alright, so it's going to be pretty important. Come on. Right now I'm going along the outside edge of this. So a little bit of a lighter region in there. We'll add the reflection a little bit. I really need to write down the name, learn the name of the artist, the musician who's recorded the tracks that I'm using here. I really enjoy. I'd like to make sure that they get some credit. And they're also on YouTube. You can be able to look them up then if you're interested in their music as well. Now we're going to push some paint up. And as you paint, you start to realize you get paint build up in your brush. This little back and forth motion kind of like pumps the paint out between the bristles. So you're pushing forward, bristles back and forth, squishes the paint out from between them. And so you can offload some of the paint that's in your brush that way. And I tend to go over and kind of get all the brush strokes going in the same direction. It's just an extra step that adds a little bit of, not everybody wants that look, but brings everything more in line with each other. There's no errant strokes out there. No weird directions going on, catching light in funny ways. In here we've got this say it's our darkest shadow, but there's a reflection in here, so it's brought up too, so we're gonna have to get just the edges along the ball where the shadow is darkest under there, and then we'll use a stepped up value to fill in the rest. There's actually right here on this face where it's turned away from the light a little bit, but the ball is overcasting a shadow here. There's a little bit of a shadow that comes across this that is pretty close to that extreme value. So we're just going to go use the extreme, our darkest shadow, and we're going to fill this in. This nice little swoop to it. It might be a little overrepresented there. And also in the shadow, this little edge right here is pretty extreme. And then we just have the shadow under here. Again, kind of starts out at its darkest value right against the leg of this geometrical stand and lightens as it pulls away from that more, gathering more light, reflecting into it. So we're going to go ahead and start stepping up our shadow values. By starting to pick up some of this next level, I'm just going to put it on the brush itself. I don't need a lot of this, so I'm just going to go ahead and kind of mix between the two where they meet. I'm trying to get something that's a step up from this, step down from that. We're going to fill that in here. Right along that wooden rod. And we're just going to kind of blend. Use this back in here. And this painting has quite a bit in the light. And there's a lot more variation in the lights than in the shadows on this one. The shadows are pretty apparent. I don't know that it's showing much lightened up, but we're going to step fully up into our lightest shadow. We're going to catch this face of the stand. And it's kind of hard to see the difference sometimes, especially this early in the painting when so much of this is white, that there's much of a difference between the shadows. Until we get this darkened, that difference will really start to show more. So I just mixed a little bit of our darkest light with our shadow to bring the shadow still darker than our light, but closer to that light value. So we are showing a bit dark here. We're going to bring this down as it follows the curvature of the ball that's casting a shadow on it here. So we're just let that be a curve. And we'll just finish filling this in. I'm going to put some of this up in here because I think it is a little bit too dark. There's a bigger step in the reference where that edge is. What else do we have? We have this bit down here that's getting lighter as it gets further away from the... A bit of a reflection coming off of this, reflecting back onto the ball and back down again. So it's a bit lighter here. We're just going to kind of lightly blend that out. See, there's a transition there. I think that's getting picked up by the camera here. You can see there's a transition, so. But we're still very much in our shadow. Now, I did not put any shadow on the sphere yet, and I'm going to go with this lightest shadow value. Start placing this here. There's a lot of reflection in the sphere. We're getting reflection off of the back tabletop is also a white fabric, and so it's very much going to have some reflections added in here that are bring it closer to our light values. So we're a little darker right in here and right here, but this gets lighter through here. So I'm going to go and bring some more of my lights down into my shadow here. We're going to use that lighter value. Right here. Reflection off of the wood, reflection off of the fabric over this way. And then I'm going to switch brushes because I want to have a lights brush so that we can step more easily into our lights without bringing so much of the dark contamination with us. Get a lot of paint loaded up in that brush, and then it's going to really darken our lights. And so we're just going to kind of start laying this in, and I'm going to keep stepping this up as I go further away from this transition area. Then we'll come back and we'll blend that transition itself together better. So I'm going to go right up to the line, but I'm not going to cross the line. And I need to step right into that extreme because this is part of my darkest light. So we laid down our transition from the moderate into the extreme light, and we'll lighten that then as we continue on. But since I'm at this value, I'm going to go ahead and fill in the stand here. And it appears that the darkest part of the stand is here. This is a little bit lighter because of the reflection coming off of the fabric. And we have pretty extreme light here, but we're going to use this moderate in here, this lowest value of light. I might even step it up just a hair from this. As you can see, there's actually a wood grain there. I don't know if I'll... Not planning to go to the effort of painting in the wood grain today. Right now we're just trying to get a pretty reasonable representation of what our reference is. Shapes and shadows. Every painting that you do for practice should have a purpose. Something that you're particularly focusing on to achieve. You don't just step out, pick up a paintbrush one day and, well, some people do. Some people have a better eye naturally for perspective and proportion, and others don't. But you don't generally just pick up a brush and suddenly painting ultra realism. You have to pick something you're going to practice and work on, to focus on, to increase that particular skill. And today we're focusing just on determining our values and laying them in where they belong. And some freehand painting. Alright, so I'm going to bring this up just a little bit. I'm going to bring a little bit of the extreme light over. Kind of make an admixture between the two with what's on the brush. It's off to the side here, so you can see this is lighter than our moderate shadow. And this is going to go on this edge, this face of the object. And it's really, the paintings really come together with subtleties that usually you can't. Like, I probably am not going to get into the subtle levels required for really capturing the essence of the reference. Rounded corners, just how rounded the corners are of this object. Just how fuzzy the surface is, the wood grain. All of those little details add a lot of time to the process. This curve, I'm not representing the curve very well here. Have to touch that back up probably. We'll use a number 2 brush here when we get done and try to add in a little bit of those touches, but they're what really sets a painting apart. Bring down a little more of that paint into this mix so I can extend it out. And as I paint, you can see I keep encroaching up on that ferrule. I have to consciously tell myself, back off, back off. It's kind of funny. And so I try to back off as I go. And a couple minutes later I'll be right back up on it. So that's one of the things I'm kind of working on too, is try to use the full length of the handle of the brush when I can get away with it. Not everything is a detail, and you know, I treat it that way. You can tell right here there's an actual difference in value between this face and this face. There's a step, half step or step change, and these are just overall approximations. They both show a wood grain, and the wood grain's dark values match pretty closely, but the rest of the wood seems to be lighter on this right piece here. And then we're going to do a partial step up for these faces. Just a little bit of this face showing here. I think I need to bring this up a little bit further. There's a little bit of a face showing here. I'm going to bring a little more of our extreme light into this. We're going to take it a little bit closer to the extreme light, to our lightest light. I'll paint this underside. One of the things they tell us a lot of times in our instruction, I'm using an easel here so I'm standing. I like to stand when I paint because it gives me a little more flexibility in maneuvering my arm to paint. But one of the things they tell us is if you're working an edge and it's easier if you flip the painting to rotate the painting, make it easier on yourself. Alright, so we're going to go back into the ball. I'm going to use some of what's on my brush here to lay out a bit more of our shape. Now this is not quite our full extreme light, and I am going to use a step up from that even for the highlight on the ball. So let's go ahead and bring this around. Because the light's hitting about right here at the brightest spot where its highlight is. So this is where it's going to be lightest. It's just going to go darker as we go away from that. So this edge out here is actually going to be a little bit darker than the surface here where it's closer to the light. And it's very subtle sometimes, hard to detect. But we're going to go pretty much pick straight into our extreme now. We're going to bring that around. It's right along here. The ball is lighter than the stand, so we want to make sure that that shows where the stand actually begins and ends against the ball by being inherently darker than the ball right there. And I think it kind of shows okay. There's enough of a value difference to make those distinguish. And so we're gonna go along that value even and lay this in. I'm leaving a little bit of room here for the step down into the moderate light to happen. Just get the paint on this surface and then we'll smooth her out. And what's interesting to me right now is how dark our sphere appears and how light it's going to look after we get that background dropped in. It's looking a little flat here. Alright. Bring this in here. I'm going to pick up some white. I'm going to bring that over here, off to the left of my, make the highlight. And we got to soften these transitions by making our gradients, blending the edges together. This might be a good painting to practice lightly with our fan brush. Not blending the edges, but smoothing the brush strokes out as we work. But I'll do it with the number 10 brush, I think, this time. But we're just going to keep softening all of our edges till we can't see any transition edges there. We want them broken up. This breaks it up for the eyes so that they just see a nice smooth movement from one value step to the next. And solidifies the object in the viewer's eyes. So basically we are creating illusions. There isn't really a ball here on this paper. It's all built up from the illusion that there's a ball here. And a bigger brush spreads your pressure over a larger area, so it makes your brush strokes softer. So a lot of times it's easier to do this step with a even larger brush, like a number 10 or number 12. Or you just have to get very good at no tension in your arm, lots, and just barely touching the surface. And this break right here is pretty distracting in the surface, so we're going to step back down into our median values and blend this one in, get it filled in. Because it's currently breaking the illusion of a nice smooth transition. This is one of my favorite parts of painting, actually, is turning the form, blending these edges, and stepping back from a flat looking object to something that's leaping off of the canvas. I get a lot of enjoyment out of that. Basically, when I begin to trick my own eye, then I'm like, but I'm tricking any viewer's eyes too into seeing the solid form from what was once here. Alright, I'm going to pick up my shadow brush again because I want to work on this transition into the shadow. I'm actually going to pick up a little bit of our moderate light because that's where I left off at. I have a piece of dust in my paint there. Come on there. And since the brush already had a shadow in it, it's going to actually be a little bit darker that it comes off the brush. I'm going to go right over top of this and just start blending this edge. careful right along the edge of the, we might have to touch up some edges here if we mess them up trying to get the gradient on the ball. When you're painting, it's better to think of what you're painting as just the shapes and the shadows of the shadows and of the lights, and not of the object that you're actually painting. When you start in your mind thinking of it as the object, instead of just trusting in your process of lights and shadows resulting in an image of the object, you can make your brain play funny tricks, and then it affects your result. Now, it looks like I brought my shadow up a little too high, so I'm going to go back to the lights brush and push the lights down. Starting here and work my way into it. Because I've already blended this edge, we'll be able to move that edge a little bit easier. Ever so lightly now, kind of work that edge just a little bit more. You can barely see the effect of the individual brush strokes, but after you've laid multiples down, you can see quite a difference. Alright, actually liking that fairly well. Looks like I need to blend out that, around that highlight a little bit more here. It's actually a little difficult for me to see it with the light hitting it up here. So I'm trying to just, I want to say guess, but approximate where that's at. And just very lightly kind of barely touch. Better. And we've got this extreme light. I have to touch up that shadow I just pulled into it. Then we're going to lay in the tabletop in the background before we finish hitting our highlights, because right now with all that white it's still going to be difficult to see the impact, and so I want to bring in the background. And I'm just using the lightest light, not including a highlight, to represent the tabletop. And come right to that edge. We slow down our strokes a little bit when we get closer to the edges we want to leave. How am I doing in time? 7:47. So we're making some progress here, but getting close to our window of painting time here. I've debated doing some online critiques of my own paintings that I've done for this stream so far, for the YouTube channel. Kind of a step back after we're done and evaluating how well we executed on certain aspects. Because that's when you learn the most about what you need to improve on, is when you take, and sometimes it's hard to do your own self-critiques, and sometimes having that educated eye reviewing it for you. And that's part of the feedback that you'll get through the Evolve program. It can show you where you need to improve if you're having issues seeing it yourself. And so it's very much worth the value for those wanting to improve. It's well put together. Careful here, there's actually a defined edge here. Bring the paint in the same direction. Again, it's just one of those little touches, adds to the overall result. You don't have outlines around your objects, around your shadows. I'm actually going to step out here a second and grab a bit of linseed oil. And I'm going to add a couple of drops of linseed oil to both my extreme shadow, darkest shadow, and my lightest light here. This is going to make it spread much easier, make this process go a little bit faster. It reduces the pigment load a little bit, but becomes a lot easier to work with filling these larger spaces in. Not much oil, just a little bit, but it'll make it flow onto the surface much better. Reduces the amount of work. There's the extreme light. It's kind of funny how hard it is to break yourself of using terminology that you learned. For these larger areas, I'm going to step up to number 10 brush instead of a number 6. So I'll also keep the 6 in that same value for doing along the edges, cleaning up the edges, but transition isn't quite as smooth as I was shooting for here. Alright, so moving up to number 10 brush, pick up some of this newly oiled. This will help us with our time situation a little bit. Because it's fabric, there's really not much of a reflection onto it doesn't pick up much of the reflection off of these surfaces onto the fabric itself, so I'm not going to try to add any of that in. But yeah, larger brushes work much better for larger areas, and also keeps you from spending too much time on detail. One of the things Kevin Murphy's very adamant about is to use the biggest brush that'll fit in that space you have to work. So with a limit, you know. I've got number 10 brushes for doing this type of painting. This is my largest brush. I've got a few 3/4 inch brushes that I use for other styles of painting, but when I'm working with this method, I tend to stick to these number 10s, number 12s. Should probably buy some more brushes in there to work more with the ranges of paintings that we're doing today. I see some people who paint these 3-foot by 4-foot huge paintings, and they're using just a small couple hair brush, and they got lots of patience. And they put in brush stroke after brush stroke after brush stroke until they get that whole canvas filled in. And they get hundreds of hours into a painting. The results are fantastic. Can't argue with the results, but it's a lot of time to get into a single painting. So I try to be a little more practical about it. In large regions, get larger brushes and larger brush strokes. Yeah, just about 8 o'clock. Well, definitely want that to be darker, so we're going to add in some edge defining marks. Yeah, I would say we're over-representing that face, but I don't think it's hugely problematic. Lost a little bit of our roundness there, it looks like. So I'll have to go back and fix that. We've lost a little bit of our bottom edge of our face. So I thought there would be more of a yeah, it seems to be showing on the camera view better that there's more distinct break here than what I'm seeing this close to the canvas. We really pulled some of that shadow value down. And my throat's starting to phlegm up from the talking I've been doing, which is not ideal. So this shadow, I need to bring that shadow out. So I'm going to have to switch brushes here. Back to the shadow brush. And pick up some of this extreme shadow over here. So this is definitely pulled out more. I find it's self-entertaining anyway to make little sound effects occasionally with the brush strokes. If you listen to Bob Ross, he'd tell you it helps. It can make a difference in your painting. But either way, sometimes I just find it enjoyable. Now the part that's really going to lighten it up is to fill in that top background with the background value. And because it's dark, and much darker than that white, it's going to make this light gray really brighten up. A lot of paintings. And put in a pseudo table front. Sets the whole scene in space. I didn't leave the space to do that today. I can paint over and achieve that effect if I would like. I don't think I'm going to today. Another clean number 10 brush to go into our background shadow value. I'm just going to start the top left corner and work our way top right corner, since I'm left-handed, and work my way across. Have to be careful around the sphere, the ball. Yeah, knocking this white out for reference is really going to make that light gray value appear so much brighter. It's kind of magical. But that's how our eyes see things in relation to each other. Something is bright only because something else is dark, something is light. And so we use those properties to our advantage to represent things like lights, candles, flame. By making the center brighter than everything around it, it starts to appear like it's emitting light rather than and I said I was going to work right to left, didn't I? And then I went right over to the left side and filled it in. I'm funny about things like that. Follow that top line right over. Next thing I know, I was on the left side. Number 6 brush to clean up this edge. I apologize for standing in front of the painting at the moment. I'm not able to see this edge very clearly from the light coming in from the outside of the frame. More. Back in and be faster to go back in and fix it from the ball side if I mess up the edge here. So now critiquing this one, I would say I got my values off a bit. I went with my lights, went too dark with my lights, my lightest lights in relation to the rest of the objects. And so a little bit of that detail was lost. We're going to set this background edge back in the distance a little bit by making a transition between the background and the table. And blending the edge together. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just step right into this moderate light. I'm going to work this edge right over top and just start back and forth. blending this edge. Just work this back and forth. Even lighter. It's still looking pretty stark, so we're gonna fuzz it out a little bit more yet. And again, this helps to hold further out on the pressure. Helps you have a lighter pressure. My brush twisted. And we just keep blending this out till we get a nice transition. I'm gonna blend it up this way with the shadow brush. Gonna blend it the other way with the light brush. Take off some of that paint. And where's that? Our light brush, we're gonna blend right along there too. You're getting a nice soft kind of a transition into that back line. Now I'm getting some brush strokes a little too heavy in there. So it kind of fades away back into the back there. A little less fading right in here, so we're gonna fade this out and we're gonna go back in and clean up that edges in there. Alright, so we have this one on here. Just smoothing out the paint in the back here, making sure all this brush strokes in the background are going in a similar direction. Just very lightly, kind of changes the direction a little bit. You can see the difference in the light, the way it hits back there. And so we want big movements up here, straight down. As we get closer to that transition, we're going to want to make smaller movements, so we don't pull any of those lighter values up in there. Too much. Just kind of lightly pull over that too here. Alright, so we gotta put some finishing touches on here. I'm gonna get the number 2 brush out. I'm gonna clean up this edge here. There's a little bit of a line here we can put in, kind of an edge. Shows the joint. And we can do the same thing on the light side. Take a little bit of this light. Edge. Why did I get the angle off on that one? Remember how I was talking earlier about my angles being off? Well, you get to see that one live. I want to pull this a little more distinctly from the background. If you want, you can actually lay in a little bit of the wood grain. Just very lightly laid on here. It's not exactly straight lines. Just some indications of the wood grain showing in there. Can't really see a whole lot of it there. There's a very thin edge where these two meet. And then there's actually some highlights. On the corners of the right here, there's a edge. There's a highlight here on this edge. These aren't really showing up much. They'll show up under a close examination of the painting, but when you're stepped back that far, they don't really stand out too much. A little bit of a shadow there I'm going to put in. Just under this edge here. And I do want to try to touch this spherical shape up here. Let's see here, where else do we need a little touch up? It looks like we're a little flat right in here. By pushing that out a little bit, we made this a little flat here. It's just a problem with losing your roundness. It's all relative, so you push out a little bit in one spot and suddenly you're now off elsewhere. Let's see here, based on our reference, what are we not showing here? Maybe take some of this white and kind of lighten the whole ball maybe. Working from the center on out, the center of our highlight on out. Now we've got two highlights shown. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be doing anything to this. It's going to improve it at this point. So I think we're just going to soften up some of these edges in here and sign it. So even if the work isn't beautiful, I think it's still important that you own it and learn from it. One of the best ways to do that and take ownership in your mind is to go ahead and sign it. Own the work you do. So with that, let me grab a liner brush. And we're going to take our bit of our darkest background value. And I think off to this side we'll sign it today. Really need to work on a smaller signature. And sanding wet into wet. It's interesting as you pick up more paint that's already on the surface. It becomes less visible. Transition here. I hope you enjoyed today's practice. Using a couple of simple objects. And I hope you learned a thing or two and enjoyed painting along. Hopefully you can make use of this reference. For some of your own work, if you weren't able to paint along today, got too wide. I find ease a bit difficult to make because they have such a small open area. You got to make sure you don't close up. That might just be the size brush that I use for this. It's a little bit too large for the size letters that I want to make. Alright, and the year. A couple more months and we'll have to change this. To the next one. Hopefully you're able to get everything done this year you want to get done before the year ends. And there we are. Hopefully you enjoyed painting along today. And if you did, please hit that like button. Let the algorithm know and myself know that you're enjoying this content. If you want to paint along in the future and you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe so you will know when of the next painting session. We try to keep it pretty consistent around 6:30 a.m. Eastern Time, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. On Wednesday, we're going to work on finishing out the bear and heart with the holding the rose. We're going to finish that painting up this week. That'll be nice. And then on Friday, we're going to be our Freeform Friday, where we'll do some wet on wet fun technique. Until next time, remember, don't be too hard on yourself. Just keep painting. Bye-bye.